What's up, everybody? Evil here. Here for I think my first build of 2023. Yesterday I attended the grand opening at Slideworks RC, a cool drift venue that just opened here in our area, and I picked up a kit while I was there. This is the Redcat RDS rear-wheel drive drift car kit version, not the RTR. I did pay retail for this car, so spending my own hard-earned cash on that, so I can promise you that my opinions of this build and its performance will be based on truth and not influenced in any way. I'm going to be cracking this guy open and getting the build on and see what all the fuss is about. Alright, so enough blah blah blah, let's get going. Alright. So, so this being, where do I even go with this? So Redcat, I've never owned a Redcat before. It was always one of those brands. It was just sort of, and they started to pump out a lot more promising looking scale RC vehicles, and then this sort of popped on the scene, and when I first looked at the RTR, I was like, okay, whatever, not that impressed. It's a non-licensed body. Didn't really give it a second thought, but once I started seeing body off shots of this thing and looking at the chassis, got my attention. Like, okay, they got some stuff going on here that looks kind of promising. So started to be a little bit of fuss around this thing. I actually saw some of these run yesterday at Slideworks, and they looked good. So I don't know if this is going to be replacing some of my cars or whatever, but I'm going to build this up and try it out, give it a fair shake. We'll do a review on Drift Itch, and that'll be that. It'll maybe stay in my stable or maybe it won't. So in any case, we're going to check this out fully and see what it's all about. I'm not doing an unboxing. I really don't want to bore you guys with that shit, but just making a couple of mental notes here. So that was one thing I couldn't tell, is it didn't, when I felt it, I pretty much guessed that it was a gear diff, but so that's promising to have that out of the box. Most of their modern higher-end drift cars have a fluid-filled diff. The pictures did not give away much about the shocks, but they are aluminum shocks and they're threaded. And the pictures, the shock collars are all the way to the top, so it did not give the appearance of having a threaded body, but the threads are super fine. But most drifters in this category, at least MST and some of the others I've looked at, don't come with an alloy shock at this price point. Chassis out. Check that out. It's got a nice flat carbon piece. All the milling looks good. Got some torsional flex to it. So one of the first things I'm going to mention about, I've never built a Redcat before, so I don't know how their kit build quality is, but if you've ever built a kit that is not logically laid out, you know how big of a nightmare it becomes as you open bags and you get piles of screws and parts and whatnot. I'm going to be sort of grading the kit as we go through based on that, but so far, like, all the bags are nicely labeled, nicely separated into sort of build quadrants for how the model's going to go together. So the plastics are in separate bags, and then they're separated into all the other mechanics and aluminum. So instructions, they don't really say what any of this stuff is. Like the parts key, it has a part number and a size, but it doesn't say what it is. Like, I guess this is an O-ring. I don't know. Like, you can kind of put it together if you grab all the parts and you're like, okay, there's an O-ring, there's a sort of a thrust washer. Outdrives are steel. It says diff oil. Doesn't say, other than filling it doesn't really say, but generally, if I'm building another kit, they generally tell you to treat these O-rings with a little bit of silicone before that goes together, so there's no binding or whatever. It can slip. So I'm gonna coat these O-rings and then start putting this thing together here. It would be nice if they, a little more detail here. You have a part number, how about a part description? Outdrive, bearing, O-ring. It would just make it a little more intuitive. Alright, there does not appear to be any leaking. So hopefully it stays that way. Alright, so this car is supposed to have 3 motor positions. They don't say jack about it in the manual. It just tells you to install in the low motor position. So I don't know about all that. I'm going to mount it where I think it's supposed to go, or where I want it, which is high. I think it's going to go like this. Just mounting up the spur gear on the hub. The plastic to aluminum, like the fit, perfect, top notch. There's no wobble, there's no nothing. It goes together like it should. Alright, so got the chassis plate and lower suspension arms done. Knuckles are built. Now doing the rear hubs. Need to build CVDs. They don't include grease in the kit, so luckily I have some laying around. Alright, so we're getting into the steering piece of this build. And if this is the actual bell crank, that's a lot of stress on one piece. Basically that steering, I think, it's going to be right on the servo spline. So while this adjustable Ackerman is super innovative, I don't know about this. We'll see how it holds up. Alright, well, it's getting servo mounting time for gyro and servo. I'm running Power HD. Running this D12. The splines fit the included servo horn just fine, so they didn't quite fit as good on the RCO MG I was going to put in this, but I'm not really particular which servo I run, so I'm installing the Power HD. So the first real snag I've hit in this kit. So these flat servo mount screws are I don't know, part number 2935. They say to put one here to mount this on the servo, but the 2935 does not fit down in there. Like, I'm afraid to crank it down into that. This plastic's really hard. Not sure what's up with that. I'm going to try the stock servo screw. Hopefully that holds it. Alright, so basically they've mislabeled this screw in the manual. Here they list this button head M3x8 as opposed to these flathead M3x8s. There's nowhere else that a button head is used. These are countersunk. Those are the flat. There's only the one. So the part number's wrong. So they include a small button head that should fit in there just fine. So keep in mind keep that in mind if you're building this. So another little issue I hit here is I'm using this low profile drift servo. They've clearly sort of accounted for having a standard servo that puts the sort of the output on the motor a lot further out. This is short, so literally the servo horn is touching the screws, so I have to put some washers under there to make that clear. Alright, so servo fitment issue resolved. Me being an RC nerd for many years, I had these carbon fiber sort of servo ear strengtheners. I think they're from a helicopter, for a helicopter, but basically I use it as a washer to lift it up. Those screws are going down too far and hitting the bell crank. So, but raising that up, freed that up to where it moves okay, and it looks kind of blingy too. So it's got a nice little hole in the bottom so you can pull the screw out of that bell crank. I'm gonna have to because this servo is not even close to centered, but it's nice that they make it easy to remove that bell crank and then those 4 screws, and then that whole servo will just lift out of there. So shock tower going on. They have really made it easy to change some of these adjustments. This car is super simple. It's very modular. It is not a complicated build at all. It's been going together really fast, and it comes apart really easy if you want to make modifications to it, which is interesting. It does seem that the design philosophy is towards tuning, like No, it's not the most elegant looking thing in the world, but extremely functional. Tell you what, this car is winding down in a hurry. It is a quick build. So I haven't done shocks yet. I'm sure that will break my will to not take a break. I think the entire thing almost has been put together with 8mm screws. This is the first bag that I recall opening that has longer than 8mm. So all the hardware, super simple. Something to be said for simplicity. Well, it's been going pretty good. All the shocks are building pretty well except for this one. Check this out. So if that's not tight, this is nice and loose, but if you tighten that down, it's like super grindy. I don't know what the hell. That spacer went in kind of hard, a lot harder than the others, and it's clearly like pinching the shock shaft or something. I don't know, kind of disappointed in that. Get a shock rebuild for it, see if it fixes it. Alright, well there she sits as a rolling chassis. Pretty impressed with the build. It went together really easy, it's really simple to build. Hardware and everything seemed really high quality. No issues with that. I don't have a lot of complaints about how this thing went together. Other than that problem with the one shock, it was really having to do a little bit of adjusting on the screw depth for the servo mount. Pretty easy. But we're ready to get some electronics mounted up. Alright, well, progress on the car continues. I was waiting on some stuff to show up. I did not want to put the motor that I had in this car, so I ordered up a 10.5 Hobbywing Respect motor that I can't figure out how to open at this point. There we go. So we'll get some proper horsepower installed in this car. Alright, well, we're getting close. Got the ESC mounted, ran my motor wires. I just need to mount the receiver, hook all that up, find somewhere to put this capacitor. And I think it's going to have a pretty clean layout. I'm going to try not to interfere with these suspension mounts. This whole car is designed to make those things easy to get to. And yeah, I don't want to try and mess that up with my electronics setup. Alright, well that's it, pretty much buttoned up. About to time to power it up and see if everything's going to work. I went ahead and disconnected the linkage because I know this servo is not centered. I don't want to bust it by bottoming it out. Alright, so electronics are on there and they work. The car is not dialed in or endpoints or none of that set, but I want to drive it this weekend, and I'm not going to drive these tires. These are the squarest tires I've ever seen. So I'm mounting up our spec tire that our club uses so that the tire should feel the same to me. The only difference I should feel would be in the chassis and whatnot. So I'm going to keep that consistent, and yeah, get these. This car, the offset on these wheels is crazy wide. So lucky I have a set of MST wheels that I have not glued in place yet. So I can set them up with a wider offset. And lucky I had a 200mm body laying around. I haven't run 200mm bodies for a long time. But yeah, a 190 on this car, like the tires just hang out like crazy, and you can't run like a super narrow offset because the hubcarrier and everything is so big. It rubs. Tetsugen wheels rub if the offset is too narrow. These even rub if the offset is too narrow, but I'm mounting them up at like 9 to get them out here like the stock wheels. So anyway, stock wheels coming off, spec tires going on, and that's how we're gonna go. All right, guys, that concludes the build video for the Redcat RDS Builder's Kit. Appreciate you guys watching. If you would not mind, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell notification if you would. I'm having a rough time getting back into YouTube's algorithm, so any help I could get from people who like my content would really be appreciated. So that's it. So I already have a running video out, so check my channel for a running video of this kit, as well as I have a review video that I'm working on right now. So that will be in the next few days. So anyway, that's it. Thanks, guys. Catch you on the next one.